Hello everyone, and welcome to the Plant Biodiversity series. In this video, we will be going over the KZN June 2025 Provincial Exam question. This question is worth 19 marks and will be covering the topics of the Bryophytes, the Pteridophytes, Gymnosperms, and Angiosperms. So let's jump into it. Question 3.2 shows us the diagrams representing the different plant groups. Diagram 1 shows the angiosperm and it has got 4 labels. The first label shows the pollen grains being transferred by the insect pollinators. Label A is pointing to the the stigma, which is at the top of the female reproductive organ. Label B is pointing to the style, and label C is pointing to the sepal. In diagram 2, we can see label D is pointing to the cone. The presence of cones indicates that this is a gymnosperm. Diagram 3 is showing us a pteridophyte, also known as the fern. We know that it is a fern for 3 reasons. Reason number 1, the pteridophytes have a feather-like appearance. The word pterido means feather. The presence of a fiddlehead also shows that this is a fern. And finally, the presence of the horizontal stem, known as a rhizome, is also evidence that this is a pteridophyte. I would like you to pause the video and answer the questions based on the diagram on the previous slide. Thereafter, we will go through the answers. Question 3.2.1 asks you to name the plant group that contains horizontal underground stem. That would be the pteridophytes. When we look at the diagram of the pteridophyte, we see that the horizontal stem out of which the fern grows is the rhizome. 3.2.2 says, using the diagram numbers 1, 2, and 3 showing the different plant groups, arrange the diagrams above in the sequence as they appear on Earth. That would be 3, 2, and then 1. Diagram 3 was pointing to the pteridophyte. Diagram 2 was pointing to the gymnosperm, and diagram 1 was pointing to the angiosperm, and that is the order in which they appear. Question 3.2.3 says explain 2. So we have got 2 sub-questions. So A says explain 2 ways on how part A is suitable for its function. So part A is referring to the stigma on top of the female reproductive organ, and this is the surface onto which the pollen grains form. So we have to explain in this point. So mark number 1, we have to say that the stigma is sticky. This means that we can say that it contains hairs to trap the pollen grain. We can see that it is a lobed or large surface to receive the pollen grain. So we get 1 mark for explaining the structure and a second mark for explaining why that structure allows it to perform its function. So mark number 1, the stigma is sticky. Mark number 2, this allows it to trap pollen grains. We can also say the stigma has a large surface and this allows it to receive more pollen grains. B says explain 2 visible reasons as to why there is an increased chance of pollination in diagram 1. So we can say that the pollen grain is in close proximity with the stigma, right? So the structure that contains the male gamete is close to the structure that receives the male gamete, so the stigma. This ensures that the pollen grain lands successfully into the stigma. The presence of pollinating bees due to large visible petals attracts pollinating agents. So there is a very high chance of pollination because of the presence of pollinators such as bees, which are attracted to the large petals. Question 3.2.4 says describe how the plant group in diagram 2, which is the conifer or the gymnosperm, is able to reproduce effectively using the reproductive structure D. So the reproductive structure D is a cone, and it provides protection for the ovules developing naked seeds, since the seed is not covered by a fruit. We know that the main difference between gymnosperms and angiosperms is that in gymnosperms the seed is naked. However, it is protected by structure D, which is the cone. Question 3.2.5 says, explain the importance of part C in the plant's energy production. So the sepal, which is right below the flower, contains chloroplasts. Chloroplasts are responsible for photosynthesis, which convert light energy into glucose. So for this question, you have to refer to 3 different things. Also, you have to have knowledge of photosynthesis. Question 3.2.6 says, fern plants are larger than moss plants. So, Pteridophytes are bigger than Bryophytes. Most of them are small shrubs, 30 centimeters to 100 centimeters in height. However, some ferns are much taller trees. Explain why fern plants grow taller than moss plants. So, point number 1, we have to say that ferns have vascular tissue or conducting tissue. This means that the xylem is able to transport water, and the phloem is able to transport food to the upper part of the plant. This means that the plant can grow much taller because it has a better transporting system. You can also say that the ferns have got supporting and strengthening tissue to keep the plant upright. Seeing as this is a 3-mark question, you have to state the structural traits that the ferns have and then explain why this allows them to grow taller. I would like you to count how many questions you got right and give yourself a mark out of 19, and then we'll go on to the next question.